are live, baby.
All right.
Live. We are live. We are live.
Yay, yay.
What is going on out there, ladies and gentlemen? King and Our Life podcast is back. Wait a minute. Today's topic, interacting with today's law enforcement. Wait for a couple of people to jump in here so we can kick
Yes,
this
indeed. Yes, indeed.
kick this off. We got a special guest in here with us tonight.
Yes, sir. Mr. Broderick Williams.
How you doing today,
Yes,
sir?
sir. How y'all feeling?
Doing lovely.
Yeah, we're doing good, my brother.
Quite lovely. Quite lovely today. Yeah, so we got a great discussion that we're going to jump into tonight. Interacting with today's law enforcement. You know, it's nothing new. It's been going on for forever.
Yes, sir. Quite some time now.
You know, we want to dive into our opinions, our thoughts, the facts that we have, the misconceptions that are out there, and everything in the between. For our followers out there that are jumping in on this topic with us, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to drop them in the chat. Our law enforcement gentlemen will be happy to answer them for you. I will be happy to answer them for you as well from my experience as a security police officer and from military perspective. I was a security police officer at the Department of Energy from 2006 to 2019, and I had almost 30 years of military service between active duty Army, Army National Guard, and Air National Guard. So we have a wealth of experience in the house, and of course, Son Solex has his experiences.
Yep, true civilian. I'm giving you every bit of it. Every bit of it.
And of course, we're going to have the call-in number for y'all. We're going to throw that up. We're going to open up the lines sometime during this live stream so that y'all can call in and ask the questions that you need to ask, that you want to ask, you know.
For sure.
Don't be shy. Ask away. So you ready to jump into it?
Yeah, we can go ahead and get started, man.
Let's jump into it, brother. All right, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, it's the King and I Life podcast, hosted by myself, Soul Toucher the Poet, and my brother, Son Solex.
Yay.
Follow us on all of or your preferred podcast platform. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And we are going to get into the topic today, interacting with today's law enforcement with our special guest, Broderick Williams. Go ahead and introduce yourself, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm Broderick Williams. Started my law enforcement career 1999 till about 2015. Throughout that time, various positions in law enforcement, from working in a jail, road patrol, criminal interdiction, and various investigation divisions.
All right. We just want to once again thank you for joining us on the King and I Life podcast. I know you're a busy man, but again, we just are humbled to have you here on the show with us to help get this information out here so people will have a better perspective of how to interact with law enforcement.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get to it, we just want to send a quick shit out. I mean, a quick shout out. Sorry.
Freudian slip.
A quick shout out. Sorry. We just want to thank all of our listeners again. For some of you who don't know, we are in 8 different countries right now. So again, we're going to shout them out right quick. Of course, the United States, Republic of India, Republic of France, Commonwealth of Australia, Islamic Republic of Pakistan, Russia Federation, Mexico, and Bangladesh, and many others in between there. So again, we just want to thank you guys for tuning in with us, and we really appreciate it. So just to show you that love, thank you.
Yes, indeed.
But of course, today we're going to be talking about the interaction with today's law enforcement. The negative interaction with law enforcement are not a new subject of wide debate. With the wide use of cell phones, body cams, and other means of recording these interactions, more light is being brought to what many rightfully define as abuse of power over policing in non-white communities, and the blatant prejudice that have been lurking in many police departments across the country. We will discuss our views on how changing need to be between the police and communities. As a parent, though, what are some key lessons that we can/should teach our children about being confronted by the police?
So who want to jump on that topic first?
I'll go first. I'll say one of the things that I've tried to influence, my younger cousins and my nieces and, younger people that I come in contact with is anytime you're being pulled over by a police officer, just keep in mind to always keep your hands either on the steering wheel or on the dashboard. I also recommend they roll down all their windows, even if they have clear windows. Of course, if you have tint on, to just roll down your windows. Again, just answer any questions that they ask you outright, simple yes or no, things along that line. But again, be direct. Don't offer any more information than what they're asking you for. Again, just keep a calm and cool head in any situation, because again, you just don't know what kind of day that officer has been having. He could have been having a rough day up until this traffic stop with you, or whatever the case may be. So those are my recommendations.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, at the end of the day, whether you like the police or not, regardless of your feelings, you have to understand as a child that they are adults, and you need to talk to them as adults. And a piggyback of what Son Solex was saying, if you have tinted windows, roll your windows down. It makes it easier on everybody involved in a situation, because a lot of people are rolling around with tint beyond legal limits, and that's already a crime. So to make your life easier, just roll down all your windows so that when they walk up on your car, whether they come from the driver's side or the passenger side, they can easily see inside your vehicle, and they're not so much on a heightened alert. So I'll leave it at that. Roger, you got anything else you want to throw into that?
Yeah, I'll just chime in a little bit on what you guys are saying. I actually have the perspective of both views from law enforcement perspective and from a parent of a child. Conversation with my child all the time. Most of the times when law enforcement interact with a civilian, it's because of some kind of violation, and with that, the law enforcement officers are already going to be heightened. They're going to be on alert. So the best thing to do is just try to, follow, the rules. I mean, not the rules, follow the instructions of the officer. Just do whatever he asks you. Like you windows down, because that's a very issue with safety. A lot of cops, when they walk up to your car, they don't know if you have someone in the back seat that's going to ambush them or, something like that. So it's very important that you just, follow whatever they ask you to do.
And the thing about it is, like we are talking the other day, is I think it's a real comfort thing. When you're dealing with a person in law enforcement, you want to make sure they feel comfortable, so they don't feel any, animosity before they even talk to you. Like, why is this person acting this certain way, or giving me this type of energy? So again, the more comfortable you can feel or make them feel, as long as you're making yourself feel comfortable, that definitely plays a role. Like I said, you don't want to put yourself in a compromising position or something that's innocent. Like moving too fast. You always want to tell the officer, "Hey, I'm reaching for my wallet," or "I'm going in my dashboard to retrieve my insurance card." Something along those lines. The more verbal you are with them, as far as letting them know what it is exactly that you're doing, that puts you both on the same even playing field there. Everybody knows what's going on. There's no question about what's going on. So it's a comfort thing.
Yeah, another thing, son. So Lex, what people have to realize is from the very beginning, your first interaction with the cop on a traffic stop, you're being investigated. The first thing they may ask you, "Hey, do you know why I pulled you over?" That's an investigation tactic. Where are you headed? Where are you coming from? All of these questions are part of investigation that most people don't realize they're being investigated. So, be careful of your answer. If you don't feel comfortable answering those questions, just give them your license and your insurance. Just tell them you prefer not to answer those questions because it's a form of investigation. And with those answers could lead to more investigation. It could lead to, do you mind if I search your vehicle that you give from the initial contact?
Right.
And Senso Lex was saying make them feel comfortable. And I know a lot of people, adults, children, or whatever, they might say the hell with their comfort, but at the end of the day, it's not about the hell with their comfort. It's about everybody's comfort because as we'll further get into the conversation, they have a use of force continuum. And, a lot of people don't know that or don't understand it. So if you're not making them, if you're not, if you escalate in the situation, you have to keep in mind that that use of force continuum is going up in other levels. But I'll leave that until we get to that part of the conversation. But I agree totally with what you guys were saying because you know especially with today's youth, they seem to be a lot more hot-headed than some of us used to be. They seem to have this invincibility about them that more than some of us used to have. So overall, we need to, even though we need to sit our kids down and tell them that, look, the color of your skin matters, but at the end of the day, you're talking to a person in a position of authority. You're also talking to an adult. If you don't feel comfortable talking to that adult, like Mr. Williams was saying, you just say you prefer not to answer those questions. If you have the ability to, um, hit record on your phone, your voice recorder. If you have the ability to, if you have cameras, dash cams in your car, because they sell them everywhere, you can buy personal dash cams in your car. You can turn that on as well. So just keep those in mind when you're having these conversations with your children. So, so a question that I want to throw out there is the fuck the police, and I have to be blunt about this because we see it all the time. Is the fuck the police attitude a hindrance when it comes to police working in minority communities?
I'll let you take that one, Mr. Roger.
Yeah, that's a big thing now. And it's aspect, I can see where that attitude comes from. You turn on the news, you see a cop guy out, beating a guy, and it's easy to get the mentality of fuck the police, you know. But you got to remember, all cops are not like that. You know, some cops go to work to do their job to help people, you know, to save lives, to protect people. So I think it's to be careful when you use that fuck the police, because, like I say, not all police are like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I will say that as a young man, having encounters with, with being pulled over for one reason or another, I think when you're that young, your energy is different. You know, it's kind of like after police every day, all day on site. But I think as you get older, you come to realize that that's definitely not the right attitude to have. I think when you're younger, you're more prone to be in environments, some of us, where, we see people being put in compromising position, for no reason. So that's kind of like where we get it from, because we take on that energy. And again, as me and King were talking the other day, that's the wrong attitude or wrong position to look at it. Is that's that person's, that's happening to them. It's not happening to me. So I would encourage, younger people, don't even take on that energy. Just base your views on your own interaction with them.
Another thing also that I have to even keep in mind with my child, a lot of the music that the youth listen, every rapper is talking about fuck the police, ride with the police, they're the ops, this and that, But so when your kids listen to that type of music, you have to be also mindful to teach them the real meaning, what cops are supposed to be doing, what cops are here for, and it's to protect, to help when you need help. I mean, to give you a hand or whatever the case may be when you ain't. So, I have to, when I talk to my children, I'm asking what kind of music they're listening to. I have to also let them know that just because these rappers are saying this, that's not your mindset. That shouldn't be your mindset.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because one of my bigger things is, you hear NWA back in the day. You hear all these rappers and saying fuck the police and blah 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 and this. You see this happen on the news, and you automatically go into the mindset is, oh, they're against black people. They doing this. They doing that. So you can't mentally own those situations, because if you've never experienced that, you don't have the right to have that type of attitude. You can empathize, you can understand, you can assess what's going on, you can seek knowledge, but don't put yourself into a situation that you've never experienced and that you're never likely to experience, because you're already putting yourself at a disadvantage. You're walking around there with this whole mentality. Well, if they do this, I'm gonna do that, and it's like, well, where are you getting that from? You've never experienced that. That's something that I've had to be mindful of, even though I've never really fully reacted like that towards a police officer. I mean, I've had an experience where I got pulled over just driving from a neighborhood that had a lot of drugs or crime or whatever case may be, but I wasn't involved in any of that. So when I got pulled over, I instantly had an attitude, but I didn't project myself in a way where that officer was going to be like, yo, get out the car, sling me in a car, anything like that. I just had an attitude like, yo, why are you pulling me over? Like, I didn't verbalize that, but in my response to him, I was kind of agitated because of the fact that I was being pulled over, and it was like, I know I didn't do nothing. I know that my everything is straight on my car and everything like that. So again, that mindset needs to be dialed down a whole lot to prevent anyone of minority background, more so than any other background, from being put into those situations like that.
Hey, and my biggest advice would be to anyone, you get pulled over, any interaction you have with a cop, the road on a traffic stop is not the time to have a court. You know, they have a courtroom for court. Feel like you're doing wrong, like you said, King. Best thing you do, get your camera, audio recorder, and just record the situation. You know, but to argue or debate with a cop side the road, 9 times out of 10, you're not gonna win that fight. You're not gonna win that argument. The best thing to do is get home safe. You know, you don't want to escalate things to where you putting your life in jeopardy or the cop's life in jeopardy, and he's back up, making things worse. So, if it's a situation where you feel you're doing wrong, you know, just follow what the cops saying. You know, don't make the situation worse by trying to prove your point side of the road.
Definitely, I would definitely encourage, you know, people not to do that. Again, like Mr. Williams saying, you have your day in court, so you know, any evidence you want to present then. That's the perfect time. You know, if you feel like you need a lawyer, then take your lawyer or get you a lawyer to go with you. But especially if you on a back road somewhere or a position where there's not a whole lot of people around it, you know, if he's not a good cop or police officer, he can pretty much make it look any way he wants to. So the thing is just about, you know, using your best mind about it. Do what you have to do, get home safe, and again, present your case in court.
Yes, indeed. So, you know, phone line is available. So if you want to call in, you can text your name to 347-778-1082, and we will get you on the line so you can ask your questions, make your comments, or whatever the case may be. So, moving on. Yeah, I'm gonna say, is implicit bias a major issue when it comes to law enforcement officers, and should racial sensitivity training be implemented? My first thought on that is, uh, what the hell is racial sensitivity? That is the first thing that comes to mind when I hear that, because my thing is this: racism is taught. It's a learned behavior. If you growing up, if you've been around all types of races, I don't understand why you would need training on to deal with people of other races. And if you know that you're going to be working in a job with other races, and 9 times out of 10, as a police officer, you're in training with other races. To me personally, I don't understand why one would need racial sensitivity training or implicit bias training. I mean, maybe y'all could give me a different point of view on that.
I mean, my thing about it is, you know, I wish the world was a perfect place where people actually didn't judge you on your skin and judge you on your character. But again, that's a different dream for a different day. But I definitely agree that some type of training should be implemented, simply because I found that, you know, with my life experience, that some people of different cultures, they just, because they believe everything they see on the news and the TV, it's like they automatically think that every person that comes across their tracks, you know, that's of my skin color is a bad person. You know what I'm saying? And so they already got this pre-notion in their head of what, you know, people of our culture are like. And it is simply not like that at all. You know, you can't judge a whole race of people by one person or what you see on the TV, especially because there are some people who really don't, you know, interact with people of color like that. So they just don't know. But as far as like law enforcement agencies, again, some of them, they don't know. They never had that interaction. You know, they've grown up in maybe a small town where majority of the people look like them. So I think training is definitely something that should be implemented Again, not only with our culture and our race, but other cultures and other races. Because if you never come in contact with these people before, and you're basically going off of what you've seen on TV and news or whatever the case may be, then automatically in your mind you're thinking that's what it's like in real life, and it's not.
Yeah, I think racial sensitivity training should be implemented. I think it's vital. And like you guys said, it's something that's learned as a child. You learn racism. You learn how to be a racist, and a child don't really pick that up. It's someone has to teach them. They have to see from an older adult or a teenager, older brother, older sister. And with my experiences, it's very important in law enforcement because, especially in the smaller cities and towns, you may have a sheriff or a chief that's been in law enforcement 30, 40 years. And he may not like a certain race of people, but his children growing up under him wanting to be a police officer, dad is a police officer. But at the same time, dad don't like a certain race of people. So therefore, this child is going to grow up wanting to be a police officer, and still he's learned over time not to like a certain race of people. So therefore, the cycle continues. You have another cop that don't like a certain race of people for the reasons they were taught when they were. So I think that training is very.
Definitely. Um, should law enforcement agencies implement better community relations programs?
I think it's very important on the same level as the sensitivity training. Um, the community is where law enforcement starts. From my experience in law enforcement, when I was out on my beat or patrolling my area that I controlled, I would make it my business to go to certain areas, certain neighborhoods, and just get out the car, walk around. Hey, I'm Officer William. You guys need anything? Here's my cell phone. Here's my office phone. Email. If you see anything that looks suspicious in the neighborhood, just give me a call. And to me, that made it a better open line of communication with the community. They felt like it wasn't police against the community. So it's kind of like they felt comfortable with talking to me about different things. And believe it or not, a lot of the crimes was because of that open line of communication I had with the community. And I can remember certain times I would just go to neighborhoods and just get out the car and just be out in the yard playing ball. I'd go out and throw the football with them or whatever, the little downtime we had. And that kind of built that rapport with the children. So as they got older, teenagers, that's Officer Williams. He's cool. He's good. He's a good cop. He ain't gonna try to treat us bad or anything like that. And they don't wait with those kids. So even now, I still have that kind of relationship with certain people. They may call me, hey, did you hear about this going on or that? Such. So I think it's very important to have that relationship with the community.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Because that also, in my opinion, will take down the stigma of that whole, I guess, no snitching mentality. You know, people take on that mindset, but they got to understand when something is happening, a crime needs to be solved. You might be the victim of that crime, and if you build in if law enforcement is making an attempt to build better community relations and the community is working with them side by side, that makes everybody's life easier, and it prevents people from going down this line of we got to take this cowboy justice, within our community, because that does not help. All you're doing is creating more crimes that need to be solved. And when you look at, well, okay, this crime is unsolved, and then you have all these people with this, well, they don't do their job, they ain't gonna never do this, they're never gonna do that. And it's like, hold up. When you build those relationships, the community relationship between the law enforcement community, it's sometimes easier to solve these crimes. Sometimes people are able to be made whole from being violated, whatever the case may be, because you have this big community relations thing going on, and there's no stigma, there's no judgment, there's no apprehension or anything like that. Um, and going back to the implicit bias thing, you might have a police officer from a different background, and building those community relations. Maybe this officer has preconceived notions about Hispanics or blacks or whatever the case may be. But if you have better community relations, that officer, even though he may come from a background where it's like, I don't deal with these people, he may be more open to working with that community, and that community may be more open to working with him because they've built that bond together.
Yeah, I definitely think that, working with law enforcement agencies along the lines of building that trust with the community is very important. Um, Growing up, King and I definitely ran across military police, but I can't say I ever remember one of them, uh, getting out of line with us or even stopping to say, "Hey, where y'all going?" It was more or less like if they saw us or saw me, they just asking, "Hey, how's your day going?" Um, just a little small talk, and again, building up that trust and rapport with the community that they go through. But again, the more the civilians are familiar with these police officers or law enforcement officers, I think that does build up that trust between the community and these people because they see them every day. So again, they're more likely to trust someone that they see every day or every other day than as opposed to someone, just coming through the neighborhood for the first time.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So the next thing I gotta ask is, well, pose, clarify the defund the police definition, because the assumption out there is that it's a overall get rid of the police, and in most cases that's not true. So, Mr. Williams, can you break that down so that from your perspective, and from what your knowledge, what that means, so that you know some people can understand what that means.
Yeah, it's kind of a complex question, but because to some people it means something totally different. To some people it means just get rid of all police officers, let the community police itself. To some people it means take away funds from different programs, community programs, um, whatever fund, police fund you may have, take away funds from that and put it into the community instead of giving it to law enforcement. Which I feel like defunding the police from whichever aspect you look at it from is a bad thing. Because if you take away the police and the community polices itself, what happens when the community is full of bad people? I mean, then you just got a chaotic situation. And even with, if you're looking at defund the police as taking funds from different programs, or if you take this money away from the programs, for one, it deters the good cops that you do have on your department or in your force or whatever. But not only that, but the defund the police, if this money is used for training to better the community and you're taking funds away from that, you're making a bad situation even worse. So I'm against defunding the police. I think a better idea would be to hold the bad police or the bad officers responsible for that for whatever they do, hold them responsible for their actions, and not just take funds away from. It could be, like I say, good police officers, and you defunding them, they're gonna leave. They don't have the funds for salary or for the equipment they need. They're gonna leave and go somewhere else. Then you're left with a community of bad police officers because they're gonna stay. They're not gonna go nowhere
Oh
because
yeah, definitely.
defunding them, they don't care. They there for a reason. It's not because of the funds. So I think it's a bad idea altogether.
Yeah, I definitely can agree with you on that um when you talk about the community police itself, because if the community police itself, we wouldn't have a lot of these issues in communities. um you have a lot of people out there with that, again, with that cowboy justice or whatever the case may be. um if communities police themselves, especially our communities, it'd be less crime. It'd be probably less negative interactions or less interactions overall with the police. And I feel like, if you're going out of your way to defund the police or anything like that, and yes, as Mr. Williams was saying, you take away from training. We all know that training is needed. They may need to go to the range. They may need um, uh, crisis intervention training. They may need training to assist with suicides and things of that nature. So you don't know what training they're actually getting. So if you're taking money from them, you're taking away from their training, and yeah, that can be bad. Defund them, the good ones leave, the bad ones stay, and they're like, hey, I got a job, I can do what I want to do. you know I have no oversight, nobody accountable, holding me accountable for any craziness that I do.
My thought on that initially was that precincts that perform badly, towards their communities, I thought that they should be defunded. But after talking with Mr. Williams and going over his perspective on it, I get a better idea of what's actually going on. So I kind of shy away from that idea now. It probably is better to just remove the bad officers from the situations. The ones who are always, bringing bad light onto that precinct or that police department, I just think that they need to be removed. Because again, if you're defunding, the police departments, like you said, and you're taking the good police officers off their beats, you're making them not want to be there. And there are certain officers who love their job. They love what they do. They actually want to help people. They actually want to help their community. So taking them away from, that particular position by defunding them, I think is the wrong course of action.
And just to piggyback off of that, when I worked road patrol, one of the biggest things I dealt with was DUIs and domestic violence. And all my training classes, most of my training were for those issues, domestic violence and DUI. We all know how many lives DUIs have taken from people, family members. Without that proper training, I wouldn't be able to detect a drunk driver could potentially be the same person that killed your mom or your loved one, your dad. So in domestic violence, same situation. I've had so much training on domestic violence, and just thinking if it was defunded, those training programs were defunded, and I didn't have the knowledge I had on those particular issues, how with community I worked, how many people would be violated or abused, and I wouldn't be able to detect or help them because I didn't have that proper training.
All right.
So we got a comment that's from Sha. She says, make the funding performance based. What are your thoughts on that?
Make the funding performance based, and which that may not be a bad idea. But with that being be the good that's performing, and not taking into consideration, maybe the bad officers not performing. But it's something about.
Definitely. I would say for a situation like that, again, if you're going off performance based, it has to be the whole police department in general, or certain precincts within that department that they're judging or making that basis off of. So,
and then another thing, when you getting funded from performance, you open the door for a lot of false performance. If I'm getting funded for how many arrests I make, or how many DUIs I get, or how many citations I write, then I'm gonna go out and just writing citations for things that probably shouldn't need a citation, or people that's probably not really DUI. I'm gonna write if I know I'm getting judged on my performance. Then hey, I'm gonna force you. I'm kind of pushing the issue for you to be drunk, and you may not be, or
Right.
I may be arresting people that really don't need to be arrested because I know my paycheck is based on how I perform, how many arrests I make. So, you have to be careful with the performance based,
So let me ask you this question then. I know a lot of people we're under the impression of police departments have to make a certain quota every month. Is there any truth to that, or um, I guess it depends on what the police department it is.
So the question was, is there any truth to police having to have a quota?
I'm sorry. I think I might have lost y'all. I think my computer went out for a second.
Yeah, the question was, is there any truth to police having to have a quota, meet a quota?
It depends on the department. Here in Georgia, I know for a while, I think State Patrol, they did have a quota. I'm not sure if they still do or not, in which most of the departments I ever worked for, we didn't have to have a quota, which I'm totally against quota because, like I said, back to my original point, it opens the door for corruption. So I'm against quotas.
I can see that.
Yeah, so let me jump in there real quick.
All right, great.
And to add on to getting onto performance based, I do think that would be a good attempt, and it does open the door for corruption and false performance, and as in the military we call it pistol whipping, because just like in the military you got certain you have certain tasks that you have to complete, certain quotas that you are required to make. And I know it's kind of different compared to military and the police departments, but you do have a lot of situations where it's like, hey, I need such and such and such and such for me to get to the next rank or get to this next school. Yo, you wash my back, I wash yours. So I get where you're coming from that. But at the same, and if it was a thing like that, and you looked at it from from an overall level, I think it would create more work for the departments, and that would probably create more frustration within the departments, and those individuals would probably go out in the street and take that on the the civilian population when it comes to that.
Yeah, I agree.
So oftentimes law enforcement officers are expected to put in situations where they must take on the role of doctor, psychiatrist, caseworker, etc. Um, since they are not specifically trained in those other areas, should they be given empathy and not just shrugged off as, well, they signed up for that job?
My thoughts with that is, as law enforcement officers, you are put into that role every single day, every occasion. Just for instance, there's been so many times I pull somebody over for a DUI. First thing they do, start crying and saying, "Hey, I just had a baby. My cat just died. I can't pay my water bill." And you kind of put in a position where you don't want to make this person's day worse. But at the same time, if you just let this person go and they drive down the road and run into a car full of a family and kill them, then what? Like you have to do your, um, and just give her advice. Hey, if you got these things going on, then don't put yourself in a position that things worse.
Yeah, I definitely, see that point of, them having to go through all these emotional roles with some of the people that they pull over. And I know it can't be an easy position to be placed in. But again, at the end of the day, they still have to do their job and, protect the civilian population. Even if it is someone, who just, have experienced something that day. Like you said, with a cat or dog dying or something along that line. But again, I think that the more training that they have, again, I don't think they should take it on to the point where some officers, they always wear the uniform even where they take the uniform off. But mentally, I think there has to be some place where they can allow, what happened on a job to take it home.
Yeah.
There's just no place for, that type of energy, as they say, to be brought into your home. And again, it's kind of like, where we work now, we had the saying of, whatever you got going on at home, don't bring it to work. Whatever you got going at work, don't take it home. So I definitely, would see where more training as far as like psychological training would help police officers, not take on what they experience throughout their day.
Yeah,
It could definitely be a stressful job, because as a law enforcement officer, every day you have the ability to take someone's life, whether it's legally or, which we all do, but by law, there are situations in law enforcement that you're put in that you have to make a decision whether it warrants to take this person's life or not. And, that can take a toll on a person, that's why there's a lot of, different programs that law enforcement offer to officers, to help with stresses and different things. Because you got to think, a police officer is still a person at the end of the day. I go to work from 8 to 5.
Oh, dropped out. So I want to jump in on there. I don't think that they should be shrugged off as they just signed up for the job, because
Hey, you there?
Yeah, we got
Yeah,
you.
we.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah.
No problem.
But yeah, just back on my point, I was saying, you go to work from 8 to 5. You take your uniform off, all these things you don't deal with during the day. You get home, you take your uniform off. You have to deal with those things. You go out, you get home, you take your uniform off, and you go out to dinner, wife or kids at the end of the day. You're a police officer. Just because you took your uniform off doesn't police officer anymore. So you still having to make decisions 24/7, and that can toll on a person. On top of that, the situation, what a police officer have to deal with in his own personal life, his home life, his wife, his kids, all his own personal stresses along with the stresses of others. It can be a lot, That's why it's not for everybody,
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree. And to what I was saying, you can't just look at it as they signed up for the job. A lot of people say that about us in the military. Yeah, well, you signed up for it, so you need to do this, that, and other. Yeah, we signed up for the job, but you have to understand, there are situations where we have to play doctor, whether it's for ourselves, our partners, or somebody out there on the street. I mean, you just can't leave them out there like that. As far as psychiatrists, we might have to talk somebody off the ledge. You never know whether it's one of our partners or someone that we're there to assist in a situation. You have to understand that even though you're in that role, you as that officer or as that soldier, you have to have empathy for that situation, and the bystanders and the naysayers, they have to have empathy for that officer, because you have to understand this is a high level stress job. It no two things about it. It's a stressful job. um and as far as caseworker, if you find a kid wandering on the street, um what are you going to do? You have to make that child feel comfortable. So when people, have that whole fuck the police attitude, and they have this whole thing about the police, and the police have this thing about people, everybody has to understand that you have a job to do, and it has to get done in order to save whatever person you're going out to save. And for a lot of those people out there who have that fuck the police attitude, and you might need the police help, you're not going to have that same attitude when they got to come and play doctor for your mother, sister, son, daughter, or whatever the case may be. You're not going to have that same attitude when they have to come and talk your mother, sister, brother, daughter, father, whatever off the ledge. You're not going to have that same attitude when it comes to them having to find your child and they have to play casework and make your child feel comfortable. So all of that has to be taken into consideration, and it has to be taken into consideration that they work this job day in and day out. You don't know what they've been through. Sometimes they put things in a little box and tuck it away somewhere, and they don't even understand how much they're going through. So that has to be taken into consideration when you're thinking about that.
And just to piggyback a little further off that, like you just said, when they have this box, they get off of their shift and they put all this stuff in a box and they hold it there for months after months after months. Unlike civilians, when a civilian got something going on, a problem going on, they're going to call the police.
Mm-hmm.
But when a police officer got something going on, who does he call? Of course, he can call the police, but it's totally different. As a police officer,
oh, we lost him again.
Yeah, but
he's probably saying, as a police officer, and that can piggyback off of
yeah,
too. Who do they call? Because there's a stigma between law enforcement and the military. It's like I gotta be that tough guy.
yeah, exactly.
So go ahead and finish what you were saying before you got.
Yeah, it's just the fact, like you were saying, that civilians call the police, but when it comes to the police having problems, their own problems, it's instilled in you that you're the tough guy. So you don't have the police to call when you got issues going on. So you have to be your own doctor, your own psychiatrist. You have to deal with these things all on your own. So day in, day out, it instill you making decisions for other people on a daily basis. It's a lot, to take in. It could be, but I don't feel like that should be used as an excuse to go out on your patrol beat and to violate people or break the law or be corrupt or anything like that. But it is something for the civilians to take in consideration.
Right. So go ahead and drop your comments in the chat. If you want to jump on here and join on the conversation, text your name to 347-778-1082 so we can get you on the line in this conversation and hear what you got to say out there. Now, in the military, we do a periodic health assessment every year, and part of that is a mental evaluation. Your thoughts on it being required for law enforcement officers to have a yearly evaluation, and also after incidents where they have to take someone's life or even interact with someone physically where it's a drain on them mentally. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think a mental evaluation is a must for officers. Because just to continue what I was just saying, on the previous question, you got this box that everything's built up in, and you having to hold that stuff in.
Oh, you lost them again. But yeah, and so even to go further in on that, you have situations to where that buildup can make a person suicidal.
Yeah.
Make them homicidal. So go ahead and finish what you were saying.
Yeah, I apologize to the viewers. I guess I'm having trouble with my internet here. But yeah, I think mental evaluations is very important, and especially after incidents, traumatizing incidents, because I'm sure you can relate. Being military, you got certain incidents that happens on your job, on your daily patrol or whatever, that's can take a toll on you. And I remember one particular incident where I was put in a position. Luckily I never had to shoot anybody or with my duty, my weapon, or anything like that. But I've been placed in positions where I thought I was going to have to shoot somebody. And after that situation was over with, I just had to take some time to myself. And I was like, hey, told my supervisor, I just need some time, just to gather my thoughts. And I could just only imagine if I did have to shoot that guy, what would have been my mindset at that point. In a lot of departments, you back at work the next day after you just took someone's life, and I think that's a bad situation. You know, I think mental evaluations is a must.
Definitely, I would definitely agree with that. A mental evaluation every year is something that every police officer, should be entitled to. I'm not sure if it happens or not, but I definitely feel like they should be entitled to that. Um, Especially when you're on, or if your patrol is in one of those inner cities or rough areas, I could just imagine what one of those officers has to go through. And again, like you're saying, Roddy, that you have to make a decision in a split second. And in some situations, again, if you have to pull, your gun, you got to make that split second decision right there. Do I shoot
Yeah,
this person?
yeah,
Do I just keep barking out orders to them, or do I keep instructing them on what I need them to do? And if they're showing, that resistance, or they're showing that, I'm coming to do harm to you, I could definitely see why, a police officer would need some type of, as they say, a step back to gather his thoughts and his emotions. Because when you go through a situation like that, um, again, where you may have to shoot someone or take someone's life, it's going to affect you. And if it doesn't affect you, then I think you definitely need to step. Um,
yeah, yeah.
Again, once you cannot pull that bullet back.
Yeah.
True.
The thing I want to throw in there, I'm not familiar with law enforcement training as far as if they have that component in the academies or anything. But another thing that people need to take into consideration, and I know the military has started adopting this type of thing as far as being cognizant of your mental well-being. That starts before you join the police force. You have to keep that in mind um, when you join. I know when you sign up for the military, you do get a psych eval, so to speak. And what people need to understand and what people need to take serious about that is take it seriously. Don't go in there and just, you know, pencil whip it so that you can get through. Take it seriously because you may have pre-existing issues or situations in your life that can affect you if you're put in a traumatic situation. You have to understand that PTSD comes from a lot of things. You may have experienced something as a child or in your adolescent years before you join the force or join the military, and you get into one of these situations, and that will drum up those past experiences, and that may corrupt your thinking when you have to make those split decisions. It may corrupt your thinking after the fact, where what happened to you before, and then you have this incident, and now after the incident your head is all over the place, and you have this stigma in your head. I can't go talk to somebody because I'm gonna be looked at this, I'm gonna be looked at that. So you kind of fall back and put that stuff in a box, and that box builds up, and it's going to explode. So you need to take it seriously and seek that help because it's out there. There are plenty of numbers out there that you can call. I think it's imperative that these agencies put that in place. A lot of places have emergency assistant programs to where you can call and you can get that help. But I think, especially with law enforcement, they need to stress that if you have a problem, if you think you have a problem, if you just need somebody to talk to, if you need time off to de-stress or anything like that, do it. Make it mandatory. For us, we in the military, we have to, sign off that we had this particular training. So therefore,
Yeah,
if we go out here and have an incident and we look at the training records and you signed off for this psych exam saying that this, that, and the other, okay, well, you lied on this paperwork. So, you know, you're held accountable for your actions because hey, we gave you the training, we
yeah,
gave you the resources, and you did not take it. Understanding that every situation is different, but you have to put that in place so that people are aware of things that are going on with them. So and that goes back to making them comfortable, and I think it makes them more productive on the job.
Agree. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
So the next thing is, should law enforcement have standardized training? And I would off the break say yes. Every branch of the military has standardized training, regardless of what type of unit you're in, where you're stationed at. There are there's standardized training for the military off the break, and then you go off to your advanced individual training to where you get your job specific training. But at the core, law enforcement should have standardized nationwide training. I don't see any. I don't see why there should be a difference in how law enforcement is trained across the country. That just to me that blows my mind because you are serving the same job, the same purpose. You may be a state trooper, you might be a county sheriff, you might be a city police, you might be county police, whatever the case may be. It's law enforcement, and I feel it just should be standardized training nationwide.
Well, I have a little different out on it. Because different states have different laws. Um,
Mhm.
I may be able to buy a gun at 21 in Georgia, 18 in Tennessee, just for different, different states. But for the most part, I agree with you. Um, just I guess you have to just take consideration each state's laws.
Mhm.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you gentlemen. I think there should be some form of standardized training across the nation.
Yeah, but I mean, at the core, policing is policing. So I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't think
yeah,
you heard the part where I said that about the military. Where you go in, you have your basic training, which is pretty standard across the board, and then when you
yeah,
go to advanced individual training, you get job specific training. But at the core, you know specifically what your job is. Now, as you were saying, state to state, states have different laws. Okay, yeah, I get that. I completely
yeah,
understand that. In one state, you might be able to buy a gun at 21, another state 18. Now, if
yeah.
you know you are a resident of this state and at 21 you can do X, Y, and Z,
Hmm.
and you go to another state and you can't do X, Y, and Z, that's your responsibility to understand those laws. And I feel like as a police officer, when it comes to basic laws that are universal across every state, I think at that point it should be standardized. Now, the little particular laws for whatever
Yeah,
state
yeah,
or whatever the case may be, okay, yeah. um but I think as a sheriff across the nation, I think I don't maybe I'm looking at this from a different perspective. But if you're a sheriff, I think sheriff training should be, well, I think every agency should have basic the same. But I think
yeah,
sheriffs have
yeah,
specific duties in every state where police don't have some of the same roles that a sheriff does. um and police officers may not have the same duties as a state trooper. So I think at the core policing should be the same. But when you break it down to, okay, well, it's this agency, this agency, I think that's where it should be separate. But I don't see
yeah.
why, if I'm speeding in one state, um, speeding in another state should be universal. I should not be snatched out my car because I went 5 miles over the speed limit in Maryland, and I went 3 miles over in Georgia, and now they beat me across the head. So I mean, when it comes down to that, I think that's where I'm at with it.
Definitely, definitely. So why does it appear in many situations when police interact with minorities, they either do not use the use of force continuum properly or not at all?
So for those who are not familiar with the use of force continuum, I'm going to dive in it to it just a little bit, and Mr. Williams can cover down if I miss something. So this use of force continuum basically is to instruct an officer or direct the officer how to respond to certain situations. So if you're standing there and I come up, it's pretty much just officer presence. Um, if you're verbally restraining me, then I get verbal with you, or I might touch you in a way that that matches your verbal uh, um, interaction with me. Now, if I apprehend you, put my hands on you, and you're resisting me, but not, you're not fighting me, you're resisting me. Okay, I'm gonna put my hands on you, and in a manner where I'm applying pressure to you to take you down, and subdue you, or whatever the case may be. And then if you're being resistant active, with meaning that you're trying to fight me, that means I go up to the next step and I pull out I pull out my collapsible baton, or whatever, the pepper spray, or whatever the case may be. Now, if you're getting to the point where you're assaulting me, you're being aggressive with me, then I'm gonna start striking you and holding you in a manner that's going to really just take you down. Now, if you're being aggressive, physical, and resistant, then I go up to the point of deadly force. So when the question is, why does it appear police either don't use the use of force continuum properly or not at all? A lot of us always see situations where the police come up and the first thing they do is grab their gun. So Mr. Williams, can you jump in and fill in any gaps that I missed, or explain that whole interaction
Yeah,
part?
the only other part that I would add in is like every training as far as law enforcement, you always taught to use one step of. So, say for instance, if you and I are verbal and you're not complying, then it's for the officer to use the next step, which is to put the hand, like maybe like put his hand on your shoulder, to maybe get you to follow his instructions or whatever.
Right.
But I think one of the main issues is that proper training, and even with the proper training, you have personal feelings. Some officers have their personal issues or personal feelings into situations, and they just skip that continuum. That's why I think you see a lot of officers going straight to deadly force, because it may be something personal, or someone's not doing what they asked to do from the cop, and the cop feel like, I'm the law, you do what I tell you to do. There's no in between. And you see that a lot. You see the cops get upset and they ask you to step out of the car, and you say, "Why I got out of the car? I hadn't done anything." You see cops automatically get offended and snatching you out of the car. And I think for a lot of cops, they're feeling like, I'm the law, you do what I tell you to do. You know, and they forget that training. And on top of that, like I say, I think a lot of personal issues.
But I think, in situations like that, that's, where they do go above and beyond with the amount of force that they show. I think that's the thing that has, most communities, or most people concerned. When you see uh, 10, 15 cops and only one person, you like, is that really necessary to have that many police officers for one person?
Yeah.
Again, you don't know exactly why that person is being pulled over. For all we know, he could be a serial killer. But when you see situations where you have civilians complying with the officers, or doing what the officers say, and they're still being roughed up, I think that's the thing that mostly has people concerned when they think about situations like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think another thing that people need to understand is, well, I think people should get familiar with the use of force continuum, because I think it's important that you understand that, if you're doing one thing, that officer has to either match or go one step above your
Yeah.
action, because the biggest thing that they're thinking about is officer safety. That's what they're thinking about. Um, your safety is second to them. And when a cop pulls you over and you get an attitude, you're being verbal with them, and it's like, well, I got to take it up a notch.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of videos on YouTube to where you see these incidents, and oftentimes don't see the beginning of the incident, but you find that you see the person yelling and cursing at the officer. Why are you doing this? And why the F you doing that?
Yeah.
I ain't do this and I ain't do that. But the important part is to get a full understanding of that situation, is to see the incident from the beginning, because when you see it from the beginning, then you can make a fair assessment of what went on and what happened and what led up to this, and not sit there and be like, oh yeah, you see the police doing this, that, and the other. Because again, you have to keep in mind that they have this use of force continuum. And if a person is not complying, okay, well, the officer has to do X, Y, and Z. And if you did not want to be put in that situation, then at the end of the day, you should have just complied. Now, if you comply, hey, that's a different story. Hopefully somebody there who captured that incident, and they can, help you out in that situation.
And another thing that a lot of civilians don't know about, and I'm not making excuses for cops that, that's abusive, for no reason. But a lot of times when you pull a person over on a traffic stop, you run the information, it's going to tell you their criminal history. It may be where this offender may have a background of, fighting police officers. So automatically the cops are already going to be one step above, because
Right.
they know this person's background.
Mhm.
This person may have a history of running or fighting, or some kind of gun charge, or carrying concealed weapons. So the officer automatically going to already be one step above. So we may skip to the verbal um, continuum and just go straight to hands on, like step out of the car, and I might put my hand on your wrist and your shoulder and step out of the car.
Yeah.
And just skip over the verbal command.
Yeah, and if that officer puts you in a leading hold to where he has your wrist and your elbow, just walk with that officer. Don't try to snatch back, because the first thing that you're gonna do, you're gonna get taken to the ground. You
Yeah.
you never
And
know.
I think that's what a lot of the issues start at. Why are you putting your hands on me and jerking away? But these cops are already on a high alert because of your background.
Right.
And that quickly, I can see where that quickly can lead to the use of deadly force, which is at the top of the continuum force. You know.
Yeah, and from my days as a security police officer, we had this training religiously, like all the time, and they drilled it in our head. Use of force continuum. So there was no at no time could we not say, well, I don't know. Um, and we discussed before that the likelihood of us engaging in something like that was slim to none, but we got trained to where it was like, this can happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. But when it happens, you have the training. You signed off on this training. You know what to do in this situation, this situation, this situation. If you're justified in your actions, you can articulate why you did it, what you did, and your reasoning behind it. So there's no mistake at all that you were properly trained on use of force continuum. You know what you need to do, when you need to do it, and why you need to do it. You can articulate that, and I think that I don't know if law enforcement agencies do this training yearly or whatever the case may, quarterly or whatever. But if they don't, I think they should, because
Yeah.
it reinforces that, hey, I have steps I need to take before I get to this level of the use of force continuum.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
So are there any specific training programs that law enforcement officers should go through? For example, in the military, we have mandatory training for sexual harassment, suicide awareness, equal opportunity, transgender training, um, and so on and so forth. So, do law enforcement agencies have this specific training? Is it mandatory? Is it optional?
I guess to answer that question, is usually depending on your department.
Mhm.
Certain departments have that training, some don't. Some require it, some don't. But I would suggest for enforcement, like early evaluations, just in and out could take a big toll on a law enforcement officer. So I think that's something that would be very important. And also just some kind of, when you're dealing with other people, you don't know what they're going through. Also, they could be going through just the same things that you're going through as a law enforcement officer. So you have to be mindful of what this person got going on at the same time.
Yeah. Um, we in the military. We also have rules of engagement training. So it's like if we out there and if we're out there and we shoot somebody and it wasn't justified, it's like, okay, but when's the last time you had rules of engagement training? Well, if you had it 3 months ago and then you get deployed and you shoot somebody and it wasn't a justified kill or whatever the case may be, there's no ifs, ands, or buts around that. You are in trouble. So I do think some of this training is necessary. And I guess I can say, um, I guess I can retract and say I guess racial sensitivity training should be mandatory if I'm looking at it from that perspective, because even though I feel like everybody on this planet should have some understanding of how to treat other people, it's always been a problem to where minorities have been treated more unfairly by law enforcement for decades, hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So, but then when I look at it like that, I have to say, well, if you knew that was wrong 200 years ago, whether you were alive or not, and you've heard so many stories of how wrong that is, I kind of feel like I shouldn't have to keep telling you that's wrong. But then on the other hand, with mandatory training, maybe I have to remind you just in case you somehow forget that, you shouldn't be doing this and you should not be doing that. And if you do this, this is what's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
I mean, my whole thing about that is, of course, you can give, police officers all the training in the world, um, give them all the equipment that they need, to do their job efficiently. But at some point, I think as a civilian, you really have to take accountability for your own actions. you know,
Mhm.
Again, like I said from the start there, you don't know what kind of day this officer has had. So anytime you're being either pulled over or in a situation where you find yourself standing in front of an officer, I think that's something, you have to keep in mind. Like, I don't know what this person has been through. So let me, carry myself and address myself in a way that's appropriate for this situation. And that don't always necessarily mean that you have to be the nicest person in the world, but at the same time, you don't always have to fly off the handle. At the first word this police officer is, saying to you, he could be saying, "How you doing, sir?" And next thing you know, you explode.
Yeah.
So again, my point being is, it's not always uh, on the officer to you know with his training, he's been trained, but you have to check yourself as a civilian. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, but yeah, at the end of the day, training, 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 and you reduce the the chance for certain things to happen. You reduce the risk of you getting caught in a bad situation.
Yeah.
You increase your likelihood of everybody going home okay. You know how to talk to certain people in certain situations, especially if you come from a background where you didn't have to deal with that, as Son Solex was saying earlier, as both of y'all were saying earlier. Um, so I think it's important that they get certain training so that you know how to deal with certain people. And also to throw in there, when it comes to sexual harassment training, I think that's important because if you're a male officer and you don't know how to talk to a person who has been um, sexually harassed, um, training like that will help you because all male officers or all officers that have never dealt with a sexual assault victim. So not only is that training good for you on the job, but it's also good for you when you're interacting with the general public, just as much as suicide awareness and equal opportunity and transgender training. So
Yeah,
all of those things are important not only for you working with the people that you're working with, but also with the people that you're employed to serve.
that's true.
Definitely.
So should there be stronger accountability actions taken towards law enforcement officers who violate public trust with their negative actions or interactions?
Yeah, I'll take that question. I think there should be. I feel like if other officers seeing where other officers were being prosecuted that did wrong or violated people's rights, that they would think a little harder before they make that same decision. But when you see an officer go out and choke somebody to death or shoot somebody 10 times for not putting your hands up, like I said, and all I get is administration leave for 2 weeks and I come back to work, then it's kind of like when the next officer in that same situation, they may take the same action, knowing that nothing is not happening, and which also put a stronger strain on the community because you keep seeing the same action over and over when nothing is happening. And it's kind of like, when do we stop taking it and do something different? So it kind of put a big like friction in between the community and the officers.
Yeah, I definitely, feel that sentiment. Um, Simply because when you have situations where police officers, they murder someone or slain someone or plant evidence and just happen to get caught, but they get a few days off with pay. Then again, other officers look at that and they're like, well, shoot, it's all good. He got away with it, so why can't I? So again, it continues that whole pattern. So I definitely feel like stricter laws should be passed. Um, and I guess it comes down to certain police departments that they have their own certain way of doing things. But again, definitely stricter, I guess, types or more or less things that when certain situations happen, there should be tougher things that happen to, police officers besides just getting a slap on the wrist and telling you to go home for a few days while you
Yeah.
still.
So Broderick, you said something that that I wanted to get you to expand on, and I have a follow up question after this. So you said, when a police officer shoots someone 10 times, right? Um, I know when I went through my security police officer training, and every time we went to the range, we we did the practice of two shots in a mass,
Yeah.
um, and then we did the failure drills, two shots in a mass, one to the head. Uh,
Yep.
so explain to the people the best way that you can when we hear on the news where the officers, three and four officers, they shot this person 34 times and blah blah blah, and it's one person, four or five officers, and they all shooting this one person. It expound on that for our listeners.
Okay. Yeah. Hopefully my internet to hold up. But I like I said, I was in law enforcement for years, and like you just said, it's always been 2 to the body, 1 to the head. In which that's how we was trained to shoot. You know, you go to the range, that's what you're shooting for: 2 to the body, 1 to the head. And I've even asked, why not just shoot them in the leg or shoot them in the arm? And the answer I always received was,
Ooh.
Wow.
I can follow up on what he was saying. You don't want to shoot somebody in the leg because they're still a threat, and your job is to eliminate the threat. So
yeah, exactly. Yep.
So you're back, so you can finish. Go ahead with that.
Yeah. And the answer I always received was because, like you just said, that doesn't eliminate your threat. You know, so when you see these officers doing this, all I could think of is all of them are doing what they was trained to do for the most part. But sometimes I think it may be personal for certain officers in certain situations. But I can't, really answer that question because I'm not them. I don't know what they're thinking. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel on that one.
Yeah, because I know sometimes when I've seen the news or I've heard stories where 3, 4, 5 officers shot one person,
Yeah.
and they emptied the clip and emptied the magazine, and
Mm-hmm.
guns locked back, and they reload and everything, and it's like, well, why did they shoot him that many times? And it's kind of like, whether it's a good or a bad officer, I kind of feel like that's a situation to where they just get focused in on pulling that
Yeah.
trigger,
Yeah.
and they're on automatic, and it's like, I'm pulling this trigger until I can't pull it no more. We can look at that as excessive, but again, we have to understand the totality of that entire situation in order to make a fair assessment. But you know, you know, I know when a lot of people look at it and you say, well, that was one person and that was 5 and 6 officers and they all shot. It's
Yeah.
kind of like, well, you're not in a war zone. That's one person who either was laying on the ground or just turning around, or they made a quick jerk move or something like that. And it's stuff like that it gives people that feeling of, wow, that's what they're doing.
Yeah. And just another thing. Like I said, I've never been in an actual shootout before, but we had shooting training within. You go inside of a house, you may have a simulated shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that always stuck out of my mind was I couldn't never tell who was shooting. If you ever been in a live firing or just run gunshots, you don't know who's shooting.
Right.
And maybe some of these officers don't know who's shooting. It could be your coworker here shooting,
Mm-hmm.
but all you hear is shots. So all you do is eliminate it. Wrong. I could see where it could happen and make a situation worse than it should have been because all you hear is shots. You don't know where they're coming from.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. um yeah, that this is a topic in a situation that a lot of us see, a lot of us deal with, a lot of us have a lot of questions, assumptions, and this, that, and the other. And I think the best thing that we can do is uh, talk about it so that we can all get a firm understanding of what the officer has to deal with, what they're thinking of, what we have to deal with as minorities, or whatever the case may be, civilians overall, and our mindset, and we all have to be accountable for our actions when it comes to something like that, because it's not always um, a cut and dry thing. It- you know,
Yeah.
we have to be mindful of all these things.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, my whole thing is, again, with so much going on, especially in our nation right now, uh, we're seeing some people get away with things that people of darker hue would not get away with. Um, Again, it is what it is, but we definitely have to have these type of conversations. Again, to inform each other and give each other better scenarios on how to handle certain situations. Um, Again, I just ask that people, really take into account anytime they're presented with a situation where they are being confronted by a police officer, to just make sure you're mindful, of your actions and your words. And again, I'm not telling anyone to be scared. That's the last thing I want you to be of. But I do want you to represent yourself, in a way that makes sure that you go home at the end of the day. I definitely would rather have someone talk to me rudely than to take a bullet. So
Yeah. Yeah.
again, you have your chance, to go to court, and again, you can bring a lawyer or whatever witnesses you may need. But at the end of the day, it's all about protecting yourself and protecting, your family if you're in that particular situation.
Yeah. And I think more of these conversations like this, are needed, maybe with chiefs of police or, active law enforcement, just to get their perspective, they're active, and I think it'll help kind of deal with what we got going on today with the police versus the civilian kind of attitude, for the police attitude.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah, I was definitely going to say that, but the whole fuck the police attitude, because that doesn't help anything change. That doesn't bring community and law enforcement together. That doesn't even bring the community together. Um,
No,
it causes a great divide, and everybody is everybody has the same goal at the end of the day, is to get home safely, live a productive life, and not feel threatened, not feel scared, and um, not feel like you're in a position to where you always have to be on guard when it comes to dealing with the police or anything like that. And police officers, the good ones out there, they don't want to feel like, when I go into this community or this neighborhood, or I get in this situation, I don't want to feel like, I have to have my hand on my gun. I want to feel like I've done my training properly to where I can handle this situation at the lowest level of interaction or whatever the case may be. Um, yes, there's bad apples on out there. There's bad apples in the forest, bad apples in the street. But treat people how you want to be treated, and that will limit the opportunity for these tragic situations to fester. At the same time, if you choose to go into this field, law enforcement field, or whatever, you have to understand that you are there for the people, not for yourself, not for however you were raised. You got in there for a specific person. That's to serve the people of the community, and you need to keep that mindset going.
Yep.
That's all I have on that.
all right. Well, again, we want to thank everybody for tuning in with us on the King and I Life podcast. Again, you can find us on YouTube. Please hit that like, share, subscribe. Facebook, all major podcast platforms. And again, we just want to thank all of our listeners, even if you aren't here in the U.S., especially because we know that it's not as easy to catch one of our shows. But we want to thank our distinguished guest, Mr. Broderick Williams, for taking his time out of his day and coming on here and discussing with us, how do we handle these certain situations. Again, we thank you, sir, and it was a real pleasure to have you on the show with us.
Yeah, and another thing I want to add: this problem is not only a problem in the United States. This is a problem everywhere. So I think this is something that everybody around the world can take on and digest, and talk to people about, because you know although the news doesn't tell the whole story, even part of the story is like, yo, that's crazy. They doing that over there too. So
Exactly.
again, Mr. Williams, we thank you for joining us, taking time out of your day to provide the information that you provided. We're very grateful, very appreciated for your presence and your knowledge, man.
Hey, it was a pleasure, man. You guys for having me.
Yeah. But we are definitely going to have a part two to this conversation, because we still got a lot more to go. But we all got to go take care of things we got to take care of. And as Son Solex said, thank y'all for listening, tuning in worldwide. Oh, and definitely follow us on Instagram as well.
Steph.
Outside of that, go on Amazon and get one of my 3 books out there. The first one is Taste My Poetry, Taste My Soul. The second one is Ballads of a Poeteer. And the third one that I just recently put out this year is Book of King, Quotes, Thoughts, and Invocations, all on Instagram. I mean, on Amazon. Hit me up privately, whatever the case may be, if you want to get you an autographed copy. It is the King and I Life podcast, Soul Touch of the Poet, and we are out.
Peace.